Hello, hello, hello. I hope you're all having a great April. Let's get started. Chapter 3 Relapses. Derek was quivering with tension, but he forced himself to stay clear-headed. Mandelbrot, I am finding it difficult to concentrate. I am dwelling on this problem and going in circles. If I enter a closed loop on the first law, I will be useless to you. Now listen to me. Before you go into any kind of closed loop, okay, I've got it. Listen. Derek was talking fast, really before he had more to say. I'm listening, said Mandelbrot. Maybe you have more information to give him, Woodruff suggested. She got down from the chair and stood in front of Mandelbrot, straining her neck to look up at him. Yes, that's it, said Derek. Mandelbrot, we're working with limited information on Ariel. The process she went through is experimental, but I think it worked. I reprogrammed her memory myself. We have to give it a chance. People will have relapses, Ariel pointed out in a tightly controlled tone. She was gripping the edge of the desk so hard that her fingernails were white. These appear to be similar to a mechanical malfunction, said Mandelbrot. Certainly medical care is a logical and customary treatment to facilitate healing. No! Ariel wailed. People don't just fall apart in a straight line like machines. I may be just fine. Her voice broke at the end, and she blinked back tears, turning away from Mandelbrot. I understand, said Mandelbrot. Inaction may not necessarily cause further harm to you. Exactly. Derek let out a long sigh of relief and caught Woodruff's eyes. She made a face that might have been her version of a wink, and then hopped back up on the chair. Maybe we can build on that and find out something at the same time, said Derek. Mandelbrot, I want to see if your attempts to get information to the city computer are blocked. That will tell us just how special this terminal is. Can you concentrate now on a function of that kind? Distracting him wouldn't hurt at the moment. Yes, Derek. I judge that the apparent first law contradiction is still incomplete. The potential loop will close no further unless I receive more evidence that inaction could cause harm. Good. Derek sat down on the edge of the desk. Now, last night we found out that the computer will not admit the existence of this office to you. I want to know if that has changed. I ordered it to block all information about our presence here. See if you can call up any hint of our using the facilities here. I am trying several avenues, said Mandelbrot. His voice was returning to normal. I am asking for information about intruders, humans, and energy consumption or oxygen usage at the compass tower. What do you get? All is as you instructed, he answered promptly. I am told that the office is not listed anywhere, nor are the water or nutrient tanks and the chemical processor listed. No alerts of any kind have been entered since our arrival. Good, Derek grinned. So we really are safe here. Our next problem is to get a line on Avery. Ariel, may I? He slid off the desk and nodded toward the terminal. Of course. She rose carefully, leaning her fingertips on the desk as though she were worried about her balance. Derek, said Mandelbrot, I suggest that we attempt parallel work with the city computer. The results should confirm or disprove your suspicions. Good idea. I'll answer the questions and tell you what I'm doing. Derek seated himself comfortably and started on the keyboard. All right. How many humans are on the planet Robot City right now? I learn none, said Mandelbrot. Ha! I've got one, said Derek triumphantly. Where is this human at the present time? Seated before this terminal, said the terminal. Derek smiled wryly at his disappointment. Serves me right, he murmured. Wait a minute. He typed in the question. How do you know I'm a human and not a robot? The consumption of nutrients from the chemical processor, use of water in the personal, and changes in the composition of the air in the office indicate the presence of at least one human. The probability of the presence of more than one human based on the amount of heat generated in this room is high. Combining this fact with the ability of robots to contact the city computer directly through their comlinks indicates the probability that you are a human. Derek felt a twinge of panic. So the use of this office has been recorded in the computer after all. His fingers fumbled on the keys and he had to retype the question twice. No. Explain your knowledge of this information, then. Information from this office is stored in local memory at this terminal. It has not been sent to the central city computer per your instruction. Is the information in your local memory available to anyone else anywhere? Negative. Derek relaxed, rubbing his fingertips against each other. At some point he would no longer be able to use the keys. Someone else could handle the keyboard if necessary, but that would mean admitting his disability. "What's wrong?" Ariel asked. "False alarm." Derek placed his fingers back on the keyboard and thought a moment. Then he entered. "What other locations indicate similar evidence of human presence on this planet?" "None." "I'm not surprised." He looked at the others. "Wherever our paranoid friend is hiding, he has the presence of mind to keep that information unavailable, even here." "Maybe especially here," said Ariel, "if he was expecting us to search this office." "Maybe he left," suggested Woolruff. "Use the key to leave the planet entirely." "Oh, no." Ariel looked from her to Derek. "You don't think he left Robot City, do you? How can we find him, then?" Derek set his jaw grimly. "Wherever he is, we have to pick up his trail here." "But if he's kept all the information out of the computer, we won't have any to find." Ariel's voice was cracking again. Woolruff moved to her side in a silent offer of moral support. "Mandelbrot, find out if any humans have been treated at that medical facility. If you can think of any more avenues for reaching evidence of humans on this planet, go ahead and follow them. And if you don't get any results, let me try." "Yes, Derek." Derek put his hands on the keyboard again and missed the first two keys he tried. "Wait a minute, we can shortcut this. Mandelbrot, you sit down at this terminal and use it." He got up carefully, looking at Ariel and Mandelbrot to see if they had noticed his mistakes on the keyboard. If so, they did not show it. Woolruff was eyeing him closely, but she said nothing. Instead, she left Ariel's side and took a position where she could watch the screen as Mandelbrot worked on it. "Mandelbrot," said Derek, "turn on the view screens." He turned to face one wall, hands on hips. A moment later the little office was flooded with light. On all sides Robot City bustled on the ground far below them, stretching away until it vanished over the horizon. Above them the sky shone down with a brilliant sunlight. Ariel turned slowly, as though in awe. "I don't recognize any of it," she said softly. Derek saw towers, spires, swirls and loops in the architecture he'd never seen before either. Humanoid and function robots moved about on the streets and on vehicles, or machinery everywhere. He remembered that single-mindedness, that sense of purpose from the asteroid where he'd first seen the Avery robots. The circuit breaker, the distinctive structure that had revealed the ability of Robot City robots to think and dream creatively, was gone. "The changes are extensive," said Derek. "It's not your memory at fault right now." "The shape changing has stopped," said Ariel. "It's caused the massive rainstorms every night." "What?" Derek turned to stare at her. She clenched at his chest, looking over his shoulder at visions only she could see. "The floods. They're causing by the shape-changing with the city's central core. We must stop it." Mandelbrot had already left the terminal and was gently reaching out to pull Ariel away from Derek. "It's just a temporary relapse," said Derek quickly. "It doesn't mean she's getting worse. Understand?" "I understand," said Mandelbrot. He was easing Ariel into a sitting position on the bed. "You know, however, that discussing the shape-changing mode a short time ago did not trigger relapse. Her condition is inconsistent at best. Apparently her memories aren't anchored in a chronological perspective." Derek paused, still watching Ariel. His impulse to hold her, to protect her, was held in check by his fear of somehow making the relapse worse. Her eyes were closed and she was taking short, shallow breaths. She was sitting up on her own, though. Gradually her breathing slowed down and approached normal. Satisfied that she was out of imminent danger, Derek continued with his thought. "Something triggers a memory, and she relives it as a current experience. Or at least it seems that way so far." "A bad experience," said Woolruff. Ariel seemed to be gaining her composure. Derek looked out at the city again. He was sure that the unfamiliar skyline had not resulted from the old shape-changing mode, but was simply the result of constant refinement on the part of the robots. Suddenly he moved to the terminal and entered another question. As before, he made a number of errors, far more than usual. He slowed down and typed them correctly. Is the city malfunctioning under any defensive overrides of the type represented by the shape-changing mode it once entered in response to parasites in human blood? No. Is it operating under any overrides to basic programming? No. He stared at the screen, somewhat disappointed. Is something wrong? Mandelbrot asked. Not exactly. I was just thinking that if the city was under an emergency of some sort, I might have been able to use it to our advantage somehow. If Dr. Avery's on the planet, he probably would have dealt with an emergency already, said the robot. Or maybe he left, but no crisis has arisen. Derek shook his head in resignation. He could be literally anywhere with a key to Perihelion, or with all the keys the robots could duplicate for that matter. It's not shape-changing anymore, is it? Ariel was gazing out at the city. Derek and Mandelbrot both looked at her in some surprise. No, Derek said, relieved. We ended it a long time ago. That danger's past. She nodded, still gazing out at the city. He watched her for a moment and decided that leaving her alone might do her more good than grilling her with questions. She was self-conscious enough already, though her quick recovery from this episode was encouraging. He just hoped that she was right about her not needing treatment by the robots. Then he saw Mandelbrot studying her also. Mandelbrot, Derek said firmly, her relapse is over. It may reoccur, I surmise. Another one may occur, but I don't think the same one will. Derek hesitated, thinking about the 2 episodes he had seen since they had returned here. We have compiled very little evidence for that conclusion, said Mandelbrot. Derek shook his head. I think that every time something of that sort happens, her memories are integrated just a little more afterward. It's part of the growth and replacement process that I didn't recognize at first. I understand the principle, said Mandelbrot. How certain of this theory are you? Derek sighed, watching him. Her face reflected more anxiety than he had ever seen her express, even at the worst of her disease. He looked back at the robot and cleared his throat. I'm sure of it. Remember, the growth of her memories and identity was intended all along. These episodes are just growing pains. Ariel closed her eyes in relief. Derek sighed. He felt as though he was juggling too many lines of thought at once. Ariel's recovery, Mandelbrot's possible first law imperative regarding her, and his own failing condition. What he really should be doing was finding Dr. Avery. He took a deep breath and tried to focus his thoughts once more. All right, we can figure that Avery has hidden all direct evidence of his whereabouts from the central computer. We'll have to cast around for indirect evidence that he didn't intend to leave. Anyone have any suggestions? Ariel looked at him for a moment, and then returned her gaze to the view screens with a slight shake of her head. Mandelbrot stood quietly, apparently reviewing and rejecting possibilities. We can't find him by staying here in this room, can we? Derek spoke softly, admitting what none of them wanted to say. The principle of identifying useful questions and seeking their answers through the central computer is sound, said Mandelbrot. Theoretically, the search could be narrowed a great deal in this manner if we ask the right questions. And if we can't? Derek demanded irritably. What then? Maybe we don't have enough information to figure out the right questions, no matter how long we sit here. Leaving this office to explore the planet greatly increases the danger to you, said Mandelbrot. Now don't you start any more first law objections. Sitting here doing nothing will eventually harm us the most. I'm not arguing against leaving itself, said Mandelbrot calmly. I do recommend a specific plan of action. Derek shrugged in agreement. Like what? That is yet to be identified. We're going around in circles. Derek threw up his arms in frustration. He banged one hand against the desk when he lowered it and grabbed it in surprise. Woolruff was watching him again. I suggest that Woolruff and I go out first, said Mandelbrot. How so? Derek rubbed his hands surreptitiously, pointedly ignoring Woolruff. Consider this. As a robot, I do not attract undue attention here. On our first sojourn through Robot City, Woolruff was of no particular interest to the robots of this community. We have the best chance of gathering information and returning here safely to report it. Derek thought a moment. The terminal here confirmed your report that no special alerts are out. The robots aren't on the lookout for humans particularly. The presence of humans, however, will very least trigger the applicability of the law of robotics. Their behavior is changed because of laws even in small ways. The shifts may be noted by the central computer and attract the notice of Dr. Avery. You mean, even if I instruct a robot to tell me something, he might be late fulfilling his duties or something? Derek nodded slowly. If someone as paranoid as Dr. Avery, I guess maybe those small variations might cause a review, if he noticed them. I'm calculating probabilities only, of course, said Mandelbrot. I am balancing potential benefit against possible danger. Derek realized, suddenly, that he welcomed the chance to rest. He didn't think himself as a coward or feel afraid. In fact, the robot city, he had remembered, had not been nearly as dangerous as the randomist, the pirate. Still, he just didn't feel right. Maybe he should lie down. "All right, Mandelbrot," he said. "You two go. We'll stay here." Thank you for listening. Hope you all have a great rest of the day. Bye.